June 6, 1944. In total darkness, 13,000 American paratroopers, loaded with over 100 pounds of gear, braced for the unknown above Normandy. Within minutes, scattered by flak and chaos, entire units vanished. Some drowned, some were captured, and many never reached their objectives. How did these airborne soldiers, dropped miles from their targets and cut off behind enemy lines, manage to turn disaster into D-Day's turning point? That question starts with what weighed on every man before he ever left the ground. A paratrooper in June 1944 stood inside a sealed camp, surrounded by barbed wire, waiting for orders that would send him into the unknown. The weight he carried was more than just fear or hope. It was measured in every buckle, strap, and pouch. The standard load for Normandy was staggering. M1 Garand rifle, ammunition bandoliers, 4 or more grenades, a bayonet or fighting knife, an entrenching tool, a gas mask, a first aid kit, and K rations for a day or two. All of it packed into a musette bag with a reserve chute strapped to his chest and the main T5 parachute on his back. A heavy canvas leg bag stuffed with extra ammo or explosives would dangle from his harness on a 15-foot line after the jump. Altogether, the burden reached as much as 150 pounds, so much that some men needed help just to stand. In the days before the jump, each man checked and rechecked his kit. Chaplains moved quietly among the rows of cots, offering last rites or prayers. Some soldiers wrote final letters home, sealing them with trembling hands and leaving them with clerks to be mailed if they did not return. Others tucked lucky tokens into a pocket or blackened their faces with burnt cork, blending ritual with necessity. At the final briefing, officers gathered squads around sand table models of the Normandy coast, tracing out causeways, bridges, and hedgerows in miniature. Every detail mattered: where to rally, which crossroads to hold, how to find each other in darkness. Inside the camp, the air was thick with sweat, camouflage paint, and the unspoken knowledge that not everyone would see the next sunrise. Each man's load was both physical and personal, carried in silence as the hour approached to move out. Engines thundered as the C-47 Skytrains taxied into the darkness, each carrying a stick of 18 or 20 men packed shoulder to shoulder. The air inside was thick with sweat, oil, and the sharp tang of nervous anticipation. Paratroopers stood in line, boots braced against the floor, hands gripping static lines overhead. The weight of 120 pounds of gear pressed into their backs and legs. Musette bags, rifles, grenades, and the heavy leg bag dangled awkwardly, already pulling at harnesses before the jump even began. As the aircraft lifted off from English fields, the world outside vanished, leaving only the drone of engines and the jostling of bodies in the cramped fuselage. The channel crossing took nearly 2 hours. In that time, turbulence tossed the planes. Men fought waves of nausea, swallowing hard, some retching quietly into their helmets. Orders ran down the line: check your harness, watch your static line, be ready. The red light by the door glowed, a warning that the drop zone was near, but not yet. Pilots flew low, around 500 feet, threading through cloud banks and sudden bursts of anti-aircraft fire. Flak rattled the hull, and tracer rounds flashed past the windows. At 12:15 a.m., Pathfinders jumped first to mark the drop zones, setting the stage for the main force. For those waiting, time stretched and collapsed. Then the red light blinked off and was replaced by green. The jumpmaster shouted, and men shuffled forward one by one into the slipstream. The static line yanked the main chute open with a violent snap, sending the leg bag swinging on its 15-foot tether below. In a heartbeat, the roar of the engines gave way to open air and the unknown below. Darkness swallowed the fields of Normandy as parachutes opened over the Cotentin Peninsula. The plan called for precise landings, but only 1 in 5 paratroopers touched down within a mile of their intended drop zone. Most found themselves scattered, alone, or in tiny groups, disoriented, and often far from any landmark they recognized. Beneath many, the ground was not solid at all. The Germans had released water from the Mer and Douve rivers, turning pastures into deep, cold marshes. Some men drifted into these invisible lakes, hitting water over their heads before they even realized what waited below. Heavy equipment, rifles, leg bags, ammunition dragged them down. Harness buckles jammed or tangled in the dark, and the quick release that worked in training became a cruel puzzle for numb fingers and rising panic. Some struggled free, cutting at straps with knives, gasping for air as their chutes billowed around them. Others slipped under, lost before firing a shot. In the chaos, every sound mattered. Paratroopers reached for their clickers, one metallic snap in the night answered by two in reply. The clickers, issued just days before, meant the difference between a friendly hand and a fatal mistake. Passwords whispered in the dark, flash met by thunder, offered another lifeline. Faces painted black, uniforms soaked, men crawled through hedgerows and ditches, searching for any sign of their own. The first hours on the ground were a test of survival, not against the enemy, but against water, weight, and the confusion of a night gone wrong. Only those who managed to shed their burdens or find high ground would see the dawn. For many, the first human contact came as a faint click in the darkness, a signal that they were not alone. Small knots of paratroopers gathered in the hedgerows, drawn together by the sound of distant cricket clickers and whispered passwords. Officers and NCOS moved through the dark, calling out for anyone who could answer. In the confusion, ranks dissolved, and a lieutenant might lead a handful of men from 3 different regiments. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Cole, soaked and mud-caked, moved from field to field, rallying stragglers. By dawn, his group, barely a fraction of a battalion, had become an improvised spearhead. Cole later reflected, never were so few led by so many. As sergeants commanded squads and captains led companies cobbled from whoever could be found. In Sainte-Mère-Église, the fighting had raged through the night. Private John Steele dangled from the church steeple, his parachute tangled in the ironwork. For 2 hours he played dead while the battle swirled below, bullets cracking off the stone. When German troops finally cut him down, he was taken prisoner, but he escaped and rejoined American lines. By 4:30 in the morning, scattered elements of the 82nd Airborne had cleared the town, raising the American flag over the first liberated French community. Elsewhere, small groups fought through hedgerows and across flooded fields to reach the causeways linking Utah Beach to the inland roads. Despite being outnumbered and often low on ammunition, these ad hoc units secured the vital exits just as the 4th Infantry Division began landing at dawn. The battered paratroopers held the causeways, blocking German reinforcements and opening the way for the beach assault to move inland. In the chaos, leadership and determination turned disaster into the first American victories of D-Day. Nearly 13,000 American paratroopers dropped into Normandy that night. Within hours, more than 2,500 were dead, wounded, missing, or captured. In some battalions, half or even 2/3 of the men were gone by sunrise. Aid stations filled up as fast as they could be found, barns, churches, even ditches pressed into service for the wounded. Medics raced from casualty to casualty, running out of bandages and morphine before dawn. Some pinned empty morphine syrettes to uniforms to warn the next medic not to overdose a man who might never see a hospital. The wounded waited in pain, sometimes for days, while fighting raged around them. For many medics, the memory of that night was a blur of blood, whispered prayers, and the knowledge that they could not save everyone. The cost of the drop was measured in shattered units and lives forever changed. General Eisenhower later wrote that, despite the chaos and heavy losses, the airborne troops succeeded in accomplishing most of their missions. The D-Day drops proved that vertical envelopment, attacking from above with parachutes and gliders, could shatter an enemy's defenses in depth. For many of the men who survived, the medals pinned to their uniforms told only part of the story. Jump wings, Purple Hearts, and French Croix de Guerre became common on battered jackets. Yet the honours could not erase the memories of that night, the sound of cricket clickers in the dark, the weight of friends left behind in the marshes, the faces that never made it home. Some veterans spoke of waking from dreams of falling, or of drowning with their harness tangled and hands numb. For decades, they gathered at reunions, bound by the knowledge that their finest hour was also their darkest night, pride and pain inseparable, carried for the rest of their lives. 80 years later, fewer than 1% of D-Day paratroopers remain to tell what happened in Normandy's darkness. Their courage shaped the world we inherit, reminding us that freedom's cost is never abstract. The memory endures not as legend but as a challenge. What will we do with the peace they won?